Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and CPS issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and today I've got a very special guest. Her name is Ravit Rose, and she's a divorce coach and mentor. She guides and supports parents as they walk into this whole world of unknown, while the divorce community app that she created provides parents with a safe and confidential space to engage with like-minded parents and connect with various coaches, experts, and professionals in divorce. After years of suffering and draining $80,000 in legal fees in a decade-long divorce, she finally understood that divorce is nothing more than a game that she didn't know how to play. And none of us know how to play. It took years of pain, many visits to the hospital, surviving day by day, wondering what she did wrong to deserve this craziness, and lots of gray hairs to realize the truth that no one had told her. And it had nothing to do with hiring the badass attorney. And she had to learn these valuable lessons the hard way. Now, she published a book called Unwanted Nasty Divorces. I'm going to let her tell you all about that and welcome her onto the show. How are you, Ravit?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Most definitely. We have a lot to learn from you.
I understand. So my story is quite crazy, actually, because when I got divorced, or when I was just thinking about getting divorced, I never imagined it was going to be so complicated. I honestly thought, we don't get along. He goes his way, I go my way, and everybody moves on with life. Little did I know what was about to come for the next decade. And so I really wasn't prepared. I was caught by surprise. I was walking into this unknown territory blind, not even knowing where to go, what to do, how to start, who should I talk to. I didn't know anything. And I didn't think that I needed to know all that.
Mm-hmm.
And so my journey was that, I ended up losing everything in my marriage, like literally everything. I walked out with like a couple $100. And lo and behold, a few years later, I ended up starting a business with an uncle. And within a couple of years, that very nice uncle turned into a not so very nice uncle and stole the business from me. And I was in my early 40s at the time, and I just dipped. I was questioning everything. Why me? How is it possible? What did I do wrong? Am I a bad person? Is there God? Am I being cursed? I mean, I asked everything because I thought it was me. I thought I was the one who was doing something wrong. So at the time when I had the business, not the one I have now, it's another one. I had one of my employees who was on the radio. He was on communications for over 40 years. And he says to me, Ravit, you seem very different lately. What is it about you that's so different? I said, nothing really. He says, no. I know you and I know people and I know that there's something that's changing in you. I said, honestly, the only thing I'm doing is writing. I have a journal, so I'm just writing in it. He says, what are you writing about? And I was like, well, everything that's in here in my head is being purged onto a piece of paper. And I said, it's like trash talk. And he says, well, something about it is working for you. He says, let me read it. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, first of all, you're going to quit your job and I need you and I don't want you to quit. Secondly, that's trash talk. That's not something that people want to read. He says, trust me. I've been on the radio for so long, I can tell you that you're onto something. And he bugged me to read it, so I just gave it to him. A couple of weeks later, he comes back. He says, Ravit, my dear, you've got yourself a book. You have a story to tell. I said, I have nothing to tell. I haven't even figured out my life yet. I don't even know where I am. And he says, nope, I'm sorry to tell you, you've got a story to tell. Anyways, about 6 months after that conversation, the company was stolen from me. And that's when I went into my depression. And he came over one day and he says, well, my dear, I guess you have a book to work on. And just for no reason at all, I just started purging. And it became a research study. And then I started interviewing people. And then I started to understand what was happening. And it's finally when I had my epiphany that it was nothing to do with me. I didn't fail. I didn't do anything wrong. It was literally that divorce is a game. And I had no idea how to play. I had no idea I was even being thrown into a game. I had no idea where I was going. And because I was so blindsided, I lost and lost and lost and lost and lost in every way possible because I really had no clue or direction to take me out of that. From that moment on, everything started to change. And so when I published my book, Unwanted Nasty Divorces, it's really a conversation piece of all the different components of divorce, and just alerting parents to have them understand that if you don't understand the basics, you're not understanding the game. And if you want to understand how nasty divorces work, you have to read this book to understand what it is that people play and how they do things so that you can move forward past that, so that you can avoid that situation. And so when I published the book, people were asking me, so, Ravi, you're telling us not to litigate, that it's not the best solution. So, what do you suggest? What do we do? And my answer was like, well, I'm not sure yet. I haven't figured all of that out. And that's how I later became a divorce coach and a mentor. And I created programs with professionals from other industries because I said, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that millions of people are suffering the same way and everyone's repeating the same patterns and no one's coming out of it. It doesn't, it's something is wrong, something's broken. And so that's where I developed a program on teaching parents how to divorce the right way, to
Mhm.
avoid ending up broken, whether financially, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. And
Mhm.
that's how I got to where I am today.
That's great. How did you develop this app?
So, Divorce by Rose is a community that I specifically created to bring together two communities. You've got the parents who are contemplating divorce and newly separated, who have questions, concerns, and worries and anxieties and don't know what to do and what's my next step and how do I do things and who do I call and where do I go, with experts, coaches, and professionals from various industries who have the tools, the strategies, the wisdom, the experience to share with the parents. So,
Mhm.
essentially, what I'm doing is I'm bringing these two worlds together where otherwise they would never even connect. So for the parent, it means that they can come in and remain completely anonymous, right? So when they come in, they're using a fake registration, fake name. They could be Bubbly Snowflake or Tom Cruise or Pamela Anderson or Sunshine Moon or Stars a Gaze or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. And the whole point is that we're not looking to identify anyone, because I know that the most important thing when you're going through divorce is that you're having a very hard time coping. And so you can't really post your biggest worries and concerns and fears on Facebook. You don't want your ex to see it. It'd be sued for libel and defamation and a whole bunch of court issues. You don't want your mother-in-law or soon to be mother-in-law to read it either and start a whole gossip column, and you don't necessarily want the world to know what you're going through. And I found that that was one of the biggest issues, is that when I was going through divorce, I had nowhere to go. I
Mhm.
had nowhere to ask my questions. And so I had to rely on myself and my emotions and trying to figure out that, what I was doing was wrong. So after I'd gone through it, I realized, oh, that was wrong. That was wrong. Should have done it this way. Should have done it that way. So Divorce by Rose answers those questions. So not only does it allow a platform for parents to engage with one another in the same sort of setting as Facebook, but also I've brought together a whole group of trusted coaches, experts, and professionals from various industries who are there to answer people's questions and comments and things like that. And they've created small bite-sized courses also on particular topics, which are very important when you're in the mode of contemplating if you should stay married or get divorced. So the parent has like a sort of like a one-stop shop for anything and everything marriage, separation, and divorce. So that's what the Divorce by Rose community is all about.
That's excellent. Have you had parents come to you that have already been divorced maybe and have been co-parenting well, but then a third party has entered the picture and started muddying the waters?
There's a lot of different scenarios. So in Divorce by Rose, we have either parents who are thinking about getting divorced and haven't told anyone yet, parents who have already told a few people, but they just don't really want to keep talking to those people, but they're not sure if they should stay married or if they should get divorced. There are people that are already separated and started their legal process, and some that are separated and have not started and don't know where to go. So everyone is coming from a different background, but at the end of the day, us coaches and experts and professionals who've all been divorced are all there to share our advice. So now you're actually gaining the advice of 20 to 25 coaches from various industries, You're getting the advice from other parents where in an environment where this is not trash talk. This is not an I hate my ex club. This is not let's just trash and tell crazy stories. We're not into that. Our purpose is to help parents evolve, transform, and move forward with
Mhm.
life. So what you're getting is a whole load of super amazing advice and guidances. So no matter what it is. So we've got tons of questions and tons of people asking different things. So yeah.
So now, because the success of your divorce will always start off and end off with you, how do you express that to a parent that is um, just, I don't know, just at the end of their rope?
So what I always say is people say, well, I'm getting divorced and he'll never do that and she'll never say that and she'll never do this and do that. And everyone's pointing fingers at the other person. And the one biggest lesson that I learned is that the divorce is not about the other person. It's all about you. The
Mhm.
success of your divorce will always start off and end off with you. It's how you show up, how you react or respond, better yet. It's how you come and show yourself to the world. Because if you come and show yourself as victim, you're going to get eaten alive. If you're solid footed and you're okay, you're emotional, but you're keeping your emotions out of the equation, you're thinking logically, your decisions make sense, it sounds like you thought it through properly, it sounds like you know what you're talking about, and you're not trying to just destroy the other parent. Everything from your negotiation from the very first conversation is going to change, because if someone gets flared up from the beginning, you're going downhill. Because once someone gets flared up, it's very hard to get them out of it unless they had like psychological issues prior to your divorce. But if nothing really happened throughout your marriage, like there was nothing major, no red signs, no flags, nothing like that, then you have to be super careful how you mention that you even want to get divorced, and what are the first conversations and do's and don'ts from the very beginning to make sure that you're always working your way up versus going down to the path of destruction, which we all know in nasty divorces.
What do you recommend when a parent is thinking about getting a divorce, of how to tell their soon-to-be ex-spouse they want out?
So before you even tell your spouse you want out, I created a course on Divorce by Rose. It's called Logically Planning Your Divorce.
Mhm.
And I know it sounds crazy and people are like, what, I have to plan it? Oh, yes, you
Mhm.
really do. So the first thing that we do is, this is like a 15-page analysis that gets you looking at your life from a global view. And we kind of do like a mock-up of your divorce, where I get you looking at every different area of your life to make sure that the decision, first of all, makes sense. And once it makes sense, we analyze all the different areas of your life to make sure that everything fits together. So I always say that your divorce is like a puzzle.
Mhm.
In order to see the picture of the puzzle, you actually have to take every component of your life, which represents a different piece of the puzzle, and put it all together. If the puzzle, you can't see the picture, it's because something is missing. It's that you haven't done something, or you haven't thought about something methodically, and that something is out of line, and that's why the puzzle is not forming a perfect picture.
Mhm.
So before you say anything at all, you have to make sure that this makes sense. You logically plan your divorce. You think about it from a logical perspective. You leave emotions out of the equation, and therefore you're going to see from the very beginning if your thought even makes any sense. Like, for instance, the first thing that everybody worries about is, I want full custody of the kids. I want
Mhm.
all the money, right? It's not logical. It's not necessarily something that's going to happen, right? But
Mhm.
if you sort of think about custody and you think about all the different areas that are going to impact your life, then when you explain that to the other parent, you've already methodically thought it through and it makes sense. The other parent's going to feel that's methodical, not like, oh, she's a whack job, oh, he's crazy, how could he think this and that, because it makes no sense. So once you start to sort of think it through from the very beginning, you're already starting off on a lower tension. And when
Mhm.
you start off on a lower tension, usually it means that the first conversation already starts off on a better note.
Mhm. Have you run across parents that have decided, well, going through this, I think we're going to stay together? Have you found that to happen?
Yeah, definitely. So I've coached quite a few people who were thinking about getting divorced. And then I said, okay, hold on. Stop. Before you even think of telling them, let's go through. I've got 3 analyses that I work on with them. And I said, once we do these analyses, if you've made the decision you want to leave, great. Then we'll plan your next steps. But before you say anything, you have to make sure that A, it makes sense. B, is your future going to look better on the other side? C, are you even ready for this financially, emotionally, spiritually? Are you prepared for it? Is every part of your life ready for it? Because this is like destruction when you talk about divorce, right? It's like anything you knew and had is gone. So you have to rebuild. Are you ready to rebuild? Are you ready to like co-create a new life? Are you ready to move on? A lot of people ended up saying, you know what? No, it had to do with me. I didn't realize it. And other people said, yes, I'm ready to divorce. And I say, great, whichever way you decide to go, I'm good with that.
You know, how would you answer someone if they say, "Well, I want to get a divorce," and you say, "Well, why?" and they say, "I don't know."
Yeah, that's exactly the perfect person who should be taking the course, Logically Planning Your Divorce. And
Hmm.
I also have another course that's called the 5 Key Strategies to Avoiding a Nasty Divorce. In that course, we talk about what are the 5 areas that you need to think about. And in that course, I talk about and I go deeper into the realities of post divorce life. What is it going to look like? What are the 5 main areas you want to focus on? And what we do a lot is do exercises on trying to dive into why is it that you think you want a divorce? What are you hiding from? What is unresolved in your mind, body, soul, whatever part of you is just not connected? And we've got a whole bunch of courses also on Divorce by Rose that is dedicated to men only, like dads only, and mothers, and or both, that really dives into self-development, understanding more about yourself, understanding who you are, what makes you tick. Why do you feel like you're out of control? Why do you think life is out of control? Because a lot of us go through ups and downs in life. And let's say you're going through, like after a 10-15 year marriage, you're going to change. And
Hmm.
sometimes you don't realize that you've changed. And sometimes you don't realize that what's happening is that there's just giant gap between you and your spouse. Because if you think about and imagine this, let's say you met in your 20s. In your 20s, everyone's kind of on the same page, right? We're
Hmm.
all like finishing school or a trade or something, and we're thinking about getting married and children and starting a career. We're still in the fun zone. We're not entirely serious yet. We haven't really matured completely. And then, so you marry and you think of like the ideal white picket fence and kids and the whole thing. Then you get into your 30s, and in your 30s zone, you're basically building your life, you're building your home, everyone's starting to work. Okay. You're having your kids. By the time you're in your 40s, all that's pretty much settled. So you have your kids, you have your home, you have all the basics. And now you wake up one day and go, hold on a second. Who's this guy or this gal that's sitting next to me? And why are they next to me? And I don't feel connected with you. You know why? Because when you're in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s, you've totally evolved. You're not the same person. So I almost say it's almost natural that majority of people, like there's a 70% divorce rate because people don't know how to evolve together and move together on the same path. So you're always going to have one that's more evolved than the other, or 2 people that are on polar opposites of the world and everything about them. So they've changed, they've evolved, they've become different people. Their thoughts, their belief systems, their values, things may have morphed, and it makes sense. So what I say is, well, let's just see if there is this great discrepancy. And if there is this discrepancy, can you work on it to bring it back together so you're both in line with one another? Or do you A, not want to? Or B, is it not even possible? And once you look at it that way, you go, oh, that makes sense. So it's really not just about me. It could actually just be that we just grew apart. So if you
Hmm.
know that you're just growing apart and divorce is just the only logical answer, why the animosity? If you just grew apart, then you're just both not in the right place. If you're both understanding you're not in the right place, you're already starting off your divorce process on a tone of, you know what, we had a great time, whatever was. And from this point forward, what we'll do is just you go on with your life and I go on with my life.
Mhm.
But there is no conversation like this. There is no discussion like this. So it ends up being a battle about ego, power, and money,
Mhm.
and about the sharkiest, badass, craziest lawyer that you can find to screw and revenge and whatever to the other parent. And that's what ends up happening, is that the parents end up fighting over something ridiculous that is not even the reality, because their emotions are hurt, because their ego got hurt. So it ends up being a battle over ego versus over reality.
Mhm. Now, have you ever been, I guess, say, court appointed to co-parent parents at all?
No, I'm not a co-parent, and I don't go to court either. I help the individual. I don't help families. I help the individual to make the decision. What should I do? How do I move on? How do I go from here?
Mhm.
I find co-parenting is a very loose term. I love the idea of it, but I also think it's not really realistic for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And co-parenting is a fabulous idea if people knew how to divorce the right way.
Mhm.
What I do say instead is, instead of co-parenting, I talk about co-creating. Everybody's
Mhm.
got to create their own lives, right? So if you think about divorce as your golden opportunity to recreate your new life, so you want to redesign it, you want to restructure it, you want to move forward from here, you want to go somewhere great with your life. Your partner or the ex-partner, the other parent, also wants to do the same thing. If both of you have your eye on the target of, okay, I know where I want to go with my future, then you're not going to want to mess around with the present that's going to mess around with your future. But
Mhm.
when someone is blinded and has no idea where they want to go, you can't co-parent no matter what you try to do. So what you could do is just co-create. I live
Mhm.
my life, you live your life, and let's just meet somewhere halfway in the middle,
Mhm.
until the point that maybe both of you are good and solid on your feet, and then maybe you can co-parent later.
Mhm. Have you ever had a parent have a really bad case where there was, like, say, the mother-in-law involvement or the ex's wife involvement, where it just got crazy? Have you heard stories? I'm sure you have.
Oh, I could write a book on the stories I've heard. And the one thing I want to tell people is this. I used to think that my divorce was the worst that was ever experienced on this planet, until I started interviewing people for my book, and I realized that there is no worst. You know why? Because everyone's stories are almost identical. We
Mhm.
don't think it is, but I'll tell you that, Marianne, between you and me, I don't know much about you, but I can tell you that if we sat and hashed out for 2 hours, I can tell you that we'll have a lot of similar stories. Why?
Mhm.
Because there are common patterns in every single nasty divorce. The only difference is that you're going to fight over pink shoes and I'm going to fight over blue shorts. You're going to fight over one thing and I'm going to fight over another, but at the end of the day, it's the principle is always the same. It's always about ego, power, and money. It's always about a great discrepancy between the two. So I've heard a lot of stories, and people say to me, this is the worst story in the world. And I said, well, why do you need to label it as the worst story in the world? What does it matter? How is it going to help you? Your biggest concern right now is help me find a solution, rather than labeling it as the worst story on the planet. It doesn't really matter. What you need to find right now is, how do I go on with my life? How do I let go of what was and focus on what will be? Because if you keep thinking about yesterday's story, if you keep sitting in the past, you're always going to be in the past. You're not going to be able to move forward. So the people who think they have the nastiest and craziest and craziest, and they focus and focus and focus on the story, they keep reliving the story over and over and over again. And every time you relive it and every time you bring it back to life, you're bringing it back right in front of you. So you're never moving forward.
Mhm. And these people that are not moving forward, have you found that they've got physical ailments that have been caused by stress?
Oh, yeah. Stress is the number one killer when it comes to anything in life, right?
Mhm.
So I remember when I was going through the nastiness of my divorce, and every single year I was in the hospital for one thing or another. And the last thing was a cancer scare. And that just
Mhm.
totally, totally flipped me upside down. And I could not deal with anything. I had no idea for years what was going on in my life. I couldn't even breathe. It was horrible, horrible. And so I know what it's like to always be hospitalized and to always have some health issues. It was only when I finally discovered that this was a game. It was only when I discovered, hold on a second, this has nothing to do with me. I just have to learn to be smarter and figure out how to play the game and then just end it. And then
Mhm.
I turned it into like an adventure. I turned it into like something that was not this horrific situation. It was like a mystery to me. I made a commitment that I was going to figure it out. I was going to put an end to it and figure out what this game is, and just be done with it. So if you turn it into like an adventure, it takes away the attachment that you have to the story. And so then you become like this like private investigator, you become like this, you know, mystery solver. So that's kind of how I took a very, very, very overly emotional and heavy situation and turned it into something that I could cope with.
Mm-hmm. It's a matter of reinventing yourself and putting a different scenario on what's happening to you.
Yeah.
And what do you do when a parent comes to you and says, you know, they keep calling me back into court. I can't afford this. I don't know how to stop this because I have to keep going back in.
I had that story for so many years, and it is painful and it's brutal. And what I tell people is you have to understand that you got to end the game. And it's very hard because once you're in it, there's always two people. You got a winner and a loser. The loser is always going to want to keep winning, so they'll keep coming back and trying to win, and the winner is always going to think that they have like an edge over the loser and will keep taking you back to court. So it turns out to be this stupid game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I always say is before you even walk into court whatsoever, understand that you don't get to pull the plug and say, okay, now we're done, we're never going to court again. Does not work that way. Once you walk in, there's a chance you're not coming out for a very long time. So if you don't want to go into court and you don't want to get to the point of spending all that money, don't even go in there to begin with. And once you're in there, it takes a lot of strategic thinking to figure out how to get out. And it has to do with having the right lawyer, because not all lawyers are like one size fits all solution to you and to what you need. And it's also about changing. You have to change. Mm-hmm. So I got thrown in a bazillion times into court. And at a certain point, I just started representing myself. I'm like, listen, I spent 80 grand. I'm either going to be broke, and that's exactly what he wants at this point, or I'm just going to figure out how to do things differently. So I started representing myself. Whether I won or lost, I didn't care at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, like, all the arguments were so dumb. Mm-hmm. And it made no difference. And I was just counting on the years on my kids getting older and older to the point where they can make their own decisions. And then one point saying, hasta la vista, I don't need you anymore. I made it through all these years. So you gotta have to learn how to be a lot stronger as an individual, and you have to do a lot of self-development. And that's something that I think that any life-changing experience in your life requires you to do, like a lot of inner reflection, because it's always, always, always about how you show up, and how you react, how you respond, and how you behave in front of this person. Because if he feels, okay, so here's an idea. And this is an analogy I give people. Let's say you have an ex and he loves to traumatize you. He loves to just make you feel like you're just a tiny wee bit person, like you're like a non-existent, right? So what does he do? He bullies and bullies and bullies and bullies you, and he tries to push you against the corner of the wall. And often enough, and I did it, so I'm just as guilty at doing this. So often enough, you're just like, you keep being pushed, and you allow him to keep pushing you into the corner to the point where you become a victim. And that's exactly what he wants. He pins you against the wall. He says, now you're not going to get out. So he bothers you, and he frustrates you, and he takes you to court, and he does whatever just to drive you absolutely insane to the point you can't even think straight. So now that he's got you in the corner, he can say whatever he wants. He could do whatever he wants. And he could behave whichever way he wants, because he knows that you're not going to say anything, or whatever you're going to say has no value to it. So what I say is that once you feel like you're at that corner, you have to learn and understand that you've got to play either offense or defense, like a football game. You can play offense or defense. You got to get out of offense and play. You got to get out of defense, and go play offense. And that takes a strategy, and that takes skill. And a coach can help you with that. That's not something a lawyer or a therapist will necessarily help you with, but there are coaches that are skilled that help you take you out of where you are and put you into another place. That doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy thing, but it's your only way out to get yourself out of the corner and start facing him, facing him forward face to face and saying, I don't care what you say. I'm not even paying attention to you. I don't even okay, whatever. I don't care. Yeah, okay, you want that? Okay, fine. That has to be a reaction. Not, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you talking about? That's crazy. No, I don't agree with that. Because if you start to react like that, got her. So you
Hmm.
see, it's all strategy. It's all a game. It's like I always say, I should have studied human psychology. I would have probably figured myself out a lot faster.
Oh, me too. Me too. Yeah. What do you do with these exes? I'm sure you've had a parent come to you and say, I have no contact. They've blocked me from their cell, landline, everything. How can I communicate with this person when you can't?
Is it the parent or the children?
The parent. Or also, that parent has also blocked that other parent from the children's cell phones and everything.
That's a whole other loaded question. And I have, people who've dealt with parental alienation, and every case is very different. It is super hurtful. It's devastating. Um, that would be an individual answer. I don't have a one sort of global answer for that sort of situation. But you have to understand that you need to move forward with your life. You need to do what's good for you. So at the end of the day, if the other parent is not making this easy, you have to make it easy for yourself. Detach yourself from this person. If this person doesn't want to give you, email or this or that or whatever, just figure out something else. Like I have this one thing, and my ex did it to me plenty of times, and didn't want to give me the kids on Mother's Day. Okay. And you know what I said? Like at the beginning, you're like, oh my God, this is the worst thing. What a piece of garbage. Da 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 da. And you go on and on and on and tell the story and story and story and story to every single person that'll listen to you. Did it help me? No, I still didn't get the kids on Mother's Day. So what did I do? I said, my birthday and Mother's Day and every other holiday does not have to land on that day. If I have my kids the next day or 2 days later or 3 days later, that's going to be my Mother's Day. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of it being Sunday, it's going to be Wednesday, and Wednesday is going to be my Mother's Day. So what did I do? I just totally detached myself from a giant storm. Who says
Mm-hmm.
that Mother's Day has to be on that Sunday? Who says you're not going to be as valued and cherished and spoiled on a Wednesday?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We take things so literally, and I get it. I understand it. It's an important day. You don't want to be alone and all that. Just take it out of your head. Mother's Day could be any day of the year. It doesn't have to be on that day. Therefore, you've detached yourself from a giant storm, and now he knows that he can't get to you
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't bother you. So it's little things like that that you can start changing and doing, and then he'll say, well, where's that lady that I pushed against the wall, and how come she's not there anymore? She's supposed to be in the corner. Where is she? She came out of it. And
Mm-hmm.
then once he has no one to bother anymore, he goes on to someone else.
Right. Who doesn't know it's coming?
Oh, well, that's her problem.
Yeah, isn't it though? Yes.
He's not
I
looking
mean,
at the signs, so her problem.
because it's as far as holidays, like you said, which was excellent. Because even like my being a nurse, it's like, well, if Easter fell on, the Sunday, I worked that weekend. So Easter will be when you have them next.
Exactly.
And that was even when I was married to him. So we would just celebrate the holidays after, that those shifts were over with.
Yeah.
And I think parents have to look at it like that and not get, like you said, so emotionally attached that it has to be on this date and I'm going to be upset and alone.
Yes, exactly. You just turn it into another day. There's so many like tools and strategies that you can do to show up differently, to behave differently, to act differently, and to stop reacting to their nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn to just respond. Don't react. Don't jump. When you jump and you freak, they go, got her, got him. That's exactly what I wanted. Thank you. That's what they're thinking to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So your reaction has to be, your response has to be, all right, cool. Or give it 2 hours. Don't even answer. Don't even answer. And just, there's many other ways of doing things. But what happens here is that we have to learn to become a very different person.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I always say, and this is one of the videos in the 5 key strategies to avoiding a nasty divorce, right? So the first strategy is a total understanding of this. When you guys first dated, you were boyfriend and girlfriend, right? So everything at the end of the day, you always wanted to come up with one united response or one united way of doing things. And you didn't want to really rock the boat too much because you loved him or her and you wanted to be together and this and that, and you had a future together. Then you went into husband and wife. So your transition from boyfriend and girlfriend to husband and wife was not an easy transition, right? You go from not living together to living together, and all of a sudden everything bothers you. The toilet seat, the toilet paper, the this, the that, everything starts bothering you, but you learn to deal with it in a way because you have a commonality. The
Mhm.
commonalities that you want to live together, that you want to be together, you want to grow together, right? So at the end of the day, hopefully you're ending up in the same bedroom, right? So you're going to work together and unite in unity to come up with a solution. Now you're going to a whole other transition. You're no longer anything that you ever thought you were. Now you're literally mother and father,
Mhm.
total opposite people from one another. Two different points of view, two different lives, two different homes, two different ways of doing things. And the biggest issue is we don't know how to go from husband and wife to mother and father. So
Mhm.
you have to totally morph as an individual to not only not rely on that person, learn to be independent in every way possible, learn how to have a different conversation, expect a different outcome, and move on a life on your own. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. So one of the biggest issues that people have is they don't understand. They just went from husband and wife to mother and father. How do you become that? And those are strategies that I offer in my course because that is fundamental. That's huge. That's something that no one even talks about,
Mhm.
but it's the most important thing.
Well, tell me about how do you make divorce sexy again?
So I always say that one of the most important things in life is when you want a divorce, it's the fact that you just don't want to be married to this person anymore, right? You
Mhm.
want to move on with your life. At some point, whether you're comfortable right away or you're not comfortable right away to move on, at some point you're going to want to meet another person.
Mhm.
When you meet this other person, the first question is going to be, so how was your divorce? And da 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 da. When you start telling the stories and going back into victim mode and back into this and back to that, chances are the person's going to want to run away, right? They're not necessarily going to want to listen to you unless they happen to be in the same place as you and whatever. Or there's a small percentage that will accept all of that, okay? But in general, when you're fresh out of the divorce and all that, it doesn't really work. So I say that you have to divorce with maturity and turn it and make it sexy. What does that mean? When you want to redate, when you want to date someone, you look your best. You do your best, you behave your best, right? You want them to think you're sexy inside and out. The same thing goes on with a divorce. If I hear, for example, if I hear of a man who is screwing over his wife, okay, and I'm going on a date with him, believe me, I want nothing to do with him again. He could be the hottest guy on the planet. I will never look at him again. And the
Mhm.
same goes for a man. So, what everyone is looking for at the end of the day is a mature, sexy, and evolved human being.
Mhm.
They don't want to be with someone else who's draining, who's dark, who's, like, who's got like this like attachment and like vulture like attitude with the ex. So how do you make it sexy again? You become sexy inside and out. And when you start focusing on yourself and you start focusing on your life and you start focusing on the things you do want in your life, the only thing you're going to want is to be mature and sexy. You're not going to want the fights. You're not going to want the animosity. You're not going to want the battles in court. You're not going to want the lawyers anymore because it's not conducive to your goal of being sexy and mature.
Mhm.
So when you have your eye on your goal and your goal is something greater than what you have right now, your focus is always going to be on that goal. Always. And so when your focus is on something good and positive, you don't want to defray from that look on of that vision. You want to focus on that and you don't want anything else to come in your way and mess it up. So that's how you make divorce sexy and mature.
I wish it could be mature. I've talked to so many parents that it's a big mess.
It is. But it's always a big mess because we don't know how to marry and we certainly don't know how to divorce either. If people got the how-tos and people were taught how to marry, we probably wouldn't marry half the people we married. If people were taught how to divorce the right way, they would have done things differently, then it wouldn't be as ugly as it is.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying that there's obviously the exception to the rule because there are some nutty people out there that no matter what, they're just going to cause chaos and problems, especially if they have psychological issues or they're highly manipulative narcissists. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about anyone else, right? Because they're a different egg altogether.
Mhm.
But if you know what you're doing, just like anything else in life, if you have the direction, you have the focus, and someone is guiding you through every step of the way, there's no way for you to really mess it up as bad as what you and I had. We went
Mhm.
blind. We went in blind because we didn't know anything else. We don't know what we don't know until we face it, and once we face it, we're like, oh, shouldn't have done that. Should
Mhm.
have done it differently. should have, could have, didn't, right?
Hmm.
So that's the whole point of the Divorce by Rose community, is the fact that there are so many common patterns that plague families from around the world. If you don't know where you're going, you're going to have to go through trial and errors and go blindly into situations that'll cost you time, money, and energy and stress. And if you don't want to do that, and if you want to avoid the stories like you have and that I have, then you have to learn from someone who can guide you every step of the way, just like you would do anything else in life.
Hmm.
Like, for example, you want to learn tennis, go to a tennis coach. You're not just going to watch a YouTube video and become a master pro. It doesn't
Hmm.
happen that way, right? If you
Hmm.
want to learn to drive a car, you're not just going to look at a video and imagine yourself in the video and, imagine yourself in the car and be this wonderful driver. It doesn't work that way. So it takes practice and guidance, and that's why there's tons of professionals out there who could help.
Hmm. Oh, definitely. It's good that there are coaches out there.
Yes.
And I know we're under a time constraint. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
The only other thing is, please join me at ravitrose.com. In there, you'll find more information about me, and then you'll also find information on the Divorce by Rose community. There's two ways to join us in the community. You could either just join as a monthly membership at $6.99 a month, and you can come in and engage with all other parents and the coaches and everyone else. Or you could come in and purchase a course, which are all under $100, so really, really priced well, and you get a free membership with any purchase of a course. So all that is listed and laid out on the website. I would be delighted to have you guys in there. And again, you don't even have to give me your name. Just come in and say hi and say, "Oh, I heard you on the Marion show," and so happy to be here. And just say hi and let me know how I can guide you. And it'd be my pleasure to connect you with any of the coaches there, or just guide you and let you know what you can do and how you can move forward from the point that you're at right now.
Hmm. And how can people find your book, Unwanted Nasty Divorces?
So it's either available on Amazon, but if they don't remember the name of the book, then you could always find it on my website. Everything is there.
That's great. I'm so glad I had you on. I'd like to have you back on as a return guest if you like.
Absolutely, it would be my pleasure. If
Okay,
people have questions and they'd like to ask questions, I could answer that. That could be fun too.
definitely. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much.
it's my
Uh,
pleasure.
Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again with Ravit and other guests I'm going to have on. So thank you again, Ravit.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here.
Definitely.